All right, welcome back to Cut and Splice. This is Jason.
And Matt,
And this is Gil.
All right, and today we're talking about, I guess we're going to do another comparison of two movies again. This time, the movies Lady Bird and Edge of 17. Probably a couple of reasons why this is a good comparison, but I don't know what you guys think, but I know that after rewatching them recently, I was actually surprised by how many things they have in common. But I know that a few weeks back, Gil and I were kind of talking, and we mentioned a few things as to why this would be a good comparison. And I mean, for me, I would just say that they're both basically coming of age films that have very respected Oscar nominated casts, and they have a lot in common, and they're both basically about introverted girls, and they dealing with the types of stuff you'd expect in a coming of age film.
Yeah. And I guess as usual, we'll do quick recommendations and reviewing before getting into the spoilers.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious to know what like Matt's thoughts on especially The Edge of 17 because it was the first time he saw it, and whether he thinks it's
Oh
similar
yeah.
to Lady Bird.
Just to be clear, Matt, am I correct in that Gil and I had seen both of these before, and you had only seen Lady Bird? Is that right?
that is correct. I
Okay.
saw Lady Bird in theaters. The Edge of 17, I saw at 10 o'clock in the morning today.
Did you
Um,
rewatch Lady Bird?
yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I subjected you to a second viewing of Funny Games, and y'all got to subject me to a second viewing of Lady Bird.
Well, I only
Um,
watched Funny Games once, but
okay. But
it's okay. Well, you'll get back to
I,
you'll get me
when it
back
comes
at
to
some
funny
point.
games,
all right.
once is enough.
Yeah.
A spoiler alert for my my review, my final ratings. But the thing is, like, both of these movies, I was thinking about it. I had some time to digest both of them for the last couple of hours after I rewatched Lady Bird and watched The Edge of 17. And one thing that you have to respect about both of the movies is that movies about teenaged angst are really hard to do well. They're not hard to do. Like, I mean, they're like slasher movies in that it's not hard to make one. It's hard to make one that actually stands out and does something well.
I
And
would agree.
it's because, I mean, you're trying to get an audience to sympathize with somebody who thinks that he or she has serious problems, when in reality, it's just a teenager whose hormones have turned him or her into a complete narcissistic psychopath. And all the problems are created by this person being a complete narcissistic psychopath. So,
And yet, if you can pull that off, since that's practically a
right,
universal thing that we all go through at some point in life, that can make a good movie, just as long as it's done right.
right. And the funny thing is, so to put it concisely, The Edge of 17 is a grossly overlooked movie, and Lady Bird is a grossly overrated movie.
Yeah, that's pretty much the should be the tagline of this episode.
Probably.
The reason for the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I figured there's a good chance that you guys would feel similarly to how I did, but I wasn't sure. That's reassuring.
yeah, I mean, I will say that I gained some respect for Lady Bird
I did too.
while I was watching the movie. I said like, I was a bit harsh with it, but then by the end of the movie, I some of the twists and turns, I was like, oh, this is a bit generic. Like the ending and stuff. There's some good touches there, but it's not really anything new. It really does follow it's actually surprisingly Lady Bird follows the formula more so than The Age of 17. The Age of 17 does try more so to be
Yeah, which
different.
is surprising considering their reputations.
Exactly. The fact that like Lady Bird is more of a standout, and I was like, it's more of just the style, the way it was done. The acting is, I mean, I gotta say, like the best thing about Lady Bird is her performance. Like,
It's
what's
good.
the
It's good.
Sarosi?
Yeah.
uh, um,
Yeah.
how do you pronounce her name? I keep like forgetting.
I think it's Saoirse Ronan. Or yeah.
Yeah, so but it's like Saros. Anyways, but it doesn't matter. But she's
Now I feel
actually.
bad.
I felt like when I first watched the movie, I felt like she was a miscast. She's way too good looking. She's also like doesn't look very much like her family.
Agreed.
But that's like one of the many problems there. But her performance, she's a great actress.
I
Not
agree.
to mention doing the American accent too, because she's
Yeah.
Irish. But
Yeah.
the
She's not just Irish. If you see her on talk shows, she's very Irish.
oh yes, no, heavily so, like
Yeah.
more even more than Colin Farrell. Uh, in any case, but yeah, no, her performance is very understated. Like it's not completely understated, but like there's touches to it that you're like, oh wow, because like the Edge of 17 performance is a good one,
I
but
think
it
it's
is
really good.
but it is less, it's less nuanced
Yeah. Yeah.
than the Ladybird performance. But what's happening around her is more interesting. So
I
it's
agree. That's a really good way of putting it. If I
yeah,
had to sum it up, I was just gonna say that basically, it's worth looking at these two movies because they, like we have already kind of stated, their reputations are don't really match, I guess, or they're mismatched reputations, I guess, or something like that. Because I think in almost every way that a movie can be, I think that Edge of 17 is a little bit better. I certainly think that the biggest way is that it's a hell of a lot funnier. I do think that Lady Bird is meant to be a very funny movie, and I would say that any 30-minute segment of Edge of 17 has more laughs and better laughs than the entire 93 minutes of Lady Bird. Also, I mean, while I do agree with you that Saoirse Ronan's performance is very good, and so is others too. Timothy Chalamet is great in it, but
yeah.
I love to hate him. Like he's such a, well, whatever. That's for later. But anyway, it's just so interesting that these two movies only came out a year apart from each other. They're both about 17-year-old girls going through this stage in their life, and they both have a quirky best friend, and so on and so forth. Both movies have Oscar nominated leads and Oscar nominated supporting cast, and I don't understand why. I mean, obviously, we can go into this more later, but I really just don't get why, in 2017, when it came out, why Lady Bird got like 5 Oscar nominations, and not just little ones either, like all big Oscar nominations, like Best Actress, Best Director, Best Picture, Best Writing. Like, I mean, it's like big, big stuff. Why all that? And it got a bunch of BAFTA nominations. It got some Golden Globe nominations. I think it won for Saoirse Ronan. And the only thing that Edge of 17 won that year, or was even, it didn't even get any Oscar nominations. It didn't get any of that other stuff I just said. It got one Golden Globe nomination that I don't even know if she won or not. I think she might have, but like for leading actor for Haley Steinfeld. I mean, comparing the two, like the reception from audiences seem to be pretty much in agree. It seemed to like Edge of 17, but I mean, just in terms of its reputation, it's just like, I don't know, almost like a sleeper, compared like to the accolades that it has received. And it's strange to me that
Well,
one
on
is such a darling to the awards people, and the other is just nothing. And to me, it's the better one that's completely ignored.
I mean, the you can see with the ratings, like it's Edge of 17 is 7.3 and Lady Bird is 7.4 with audiences. But then the Metascore with the critics, it's 77 for the Edge of 17 and 93 for Lady Bird, which is 93 is a ridiculous like score with
Yeah,
Metascore. Like it's very rare that movies crack the 90.
yeah. I
So
don't
it's
get it.
like universal acclaim basically.
Yeah.
And it's very, very strange. Yeah, I don't get it. I think what it is, maybe Lady Bird had more to it as far as a time and a place. Sacramento as a character. Something about it is more lyrical, or at least like more thought through. Where Edge of 17 is just about a place somewhere where there's a teenager and she's got this personality, and like we're gonna explore it through these, you know, trials and tribulations. We'll just do it in a edgy way with some twists and turns and some good laughs. And yeah, I did laugh out loud several times, and I don't most of the time when I watch movies alone. So I really like give it that like,
Yeah.
especially Woody Harrelson just kills me
He's
like in that.
so great in it.
Yeah.
He is
Uh,
amazing.
I have a different theory as
What's
to
that?
like the audience scores versus like the Metacritic and everything, is that one thing that both movies have in common is a sympathetic father figure who seems to really care about his daughter, really love his daughter, seems to even love his daughter more than the mother does. But the Edge of 17 dared to actually show the male figure in a young woman's life as being incredibly important and influential and positive, whereas Lady Bird showed the father as being kind of passive and enabler, and tries to finally thrust it down your throat at the end of the movie that even though the mother's kind of nuts, she was always the positive influence on her daughter.
Huh.
So I don't think that the Edge of 17 gels politically nowadays with the narrative that you know men are useless. So
That's a
uh,
Well,
very interesting theory. I had not thought of that at all. I don't
that's
know
it might be
if
a bit far fetched though.
I mean, I don't know about far fetched. I would say it's definitely possible that you're reading a bit into it, but I mean, I'm willing to entertain it at least. I definitely never thought about that. I would say that I did think about what not about the specific thing you just said, Matt, but earlier I was thinking, is there some chance that maybe this is like a liberal Hollywood woke thing, whatever Greta, what's her name?
Gerwig.
Gerwig, is like a perfect thing that everybody would love to. She's like, checks a lot of boxes for what people would like to give awards to. But then I was like looking and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Edge of 17 is directed by Kelly Freeman Craig, and she's like a year or two older. They're both
mhm.
young, very attractive, like women who this is like their first movies and stuff like that. Or so like it's all the same boxes pretty much, So I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure why the reactions are that way. That it is an interesting thing to think about, though.
I mean, it's one other thing is that Lady Bird also is very toned down, very realistic in portrayal, and Edge of 17 is a bit more hyper,
Yeah.
kind of going out there with all the cinematic visuals and everything. And that's the reason why, one of the many reasons why I don't like Lady Bird very much is because, and we've brought this up in our Wind That Shakes the Barley episode. I like cinematic visuals. Like I like close-ups. I don't like when everything is covered in the wide, which is basically what Lady Bird is. It's unless it's a dynamic, wide like Spielberg.
Right.
But it's just basically like flat space. Everything is flat. Let's just show, and it's almost like it plays into the comedy, and it's very like understated. And people sometimes, just like with Wind That Shakes the Barley, sometimes they react to it and oh, this is interesting. There's no coverage. It's just all in the wide, and every here and there they'll have like a close up and stuff for like moments, but it's basically like done very differently.
Yeah, that's a
And
good point.
and a lot of people maybe respond to that as well. It's like, oh, this is different, and it's like with a and not to mention obviously Saoirse Ronan is a an A-lister as far as like actors, so maybe that brought attention to that as well. But yeah, Greta Gerwig, I think because she was like in Baumbach movies, people knew
Oh, that's
her.
true. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's yeah. So and I think there are a couple now, but in any case, there could be a variety of things, but you never really know. Maybe it just comes down to something as simple as marketing,
Could be.
you know. But
Well, enough speculation. Gil, what are your ratings?
yeah, so I'm conflicted. I think both my ratings are going to be emotional ones. Like I've considered adjusting them based on reviewing, but I think just because I want to be stupid, I won't. So Lady Bird back then when it came out, I rated it a 5, and
Wow.
I think I'm going to stick to it because I've been very generous with rating in our on our podcast. I would edge it to a 6 if I didn't want to drag the movie down a bit because of its reputation. And then Edge of 17. By the way, they should have dropped the. It's like just Edge of 17. It's like nobody will say
Yeah.
the Edge of 17.
Well,
And
correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that it's the title of a song that they're referencing.
oh, it is. Oh, okay, so that's
Yeah.
what it is. Um,
Okay.
in any case, yeah. So I rated it. I think just now, like watching it this time around, and I was like on the fence. I was like, I really like this movie, and it is better than most teen movies that I see. It's got like good touches, so it should be an 8. So like my ratings would be a 5 and an 8, but if I was not emotional about it, it would probably be a 6 and a 7. But I really feel like I should separate these movies more, just for spite.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think when I first watched it, I never really thought about what to rate Lady Bird, but I probably also would have put it like around a 5, 5.5, probably a 6 actually is what I would have put it. I really liked it more this time when I watched it, um, more than I did. I mean, is what I meant to say. When I first saw it in theaters, and I actually laughed more too than I did the first time when I saw it in theaters. That probably only really brings my overall feelings for it up to about maybe 6.5 or so, whereas Edge of 17 I think is like a solid 8 or so.
So it's at
Uh,
6.5
Yeah, probably 6.5 and 8.
and an
Yeah,
8. Okay, that's we're not far.
no,
Okay, so I guess it's my turn. I'll just start off with Edge of 17. I think is a solid 8 for me.
nice.
Ladybird. The first time that I saw it, I basically thought that it was a piece of cinematic garbage. I mean, if you asked me coming out of the theater the first time that I saw it, I would have rated it like a 2. This time around, I liked it quite a bit more, and I guess I'll ratchet it up to like a 4.5 or a 5.
Wow, we're
So
all kind of somewhat on the same page, even if our numbers are different
yeah,
in
I had
terms
a
of our
feeling.
reaction.
Yeah, I had a feeling that yeah. And I should say, Diana, my wife, was very upset about the Stuck in Love episode because I didn't represent her views. So
Aw.
I should do a better job this time because she's listening. No, I'm kidding. But I tried. I just don't have a good memory. But in any case, we spoke today, and she said she also likes The Edge of 17 better than Lady Bird.
Nice.
But again, I am not sure of the exact ratings. But I invited her to join us. Maybe she will someday. One last thing I was gonna say about Lady Bird 2 in comparison, before we get into spoilers, is it is a more realistic movie. And I guess that's where the style comes in as well. Like, if you compare, you know what? I guess, well, I'll save this for the spoilers. I don't know if it's a spoiler or not, so we'll save it for the spoilers. But
Okay.
yeah, there's I'll just say, as far as recommending it, there's, you definitely feel like there's touches of it that are more true to life than they are in The Edge of 17. The Edge of 17 pushes the boundary of what's
Yeah.
realistic to tell a satisfying cinematic story that represents reality but is not true reality, where Lady Bird keeps things grounded all the way through, which is fine if it's your kind of movie. I just don't find that cinematic enough. And I'll keep going back to the Kubrick quote that, like, we're not photographing reality, we're photographing a photograph of reality. That's what movies are supposed to be.
Yeah.
So
Before we jump over to spoilers, I just wanted to say, I believe it's a reference to a Stevie Nicks song.
oh, The Edge of 17.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Anyway,
wonder if it was in the movie.
Okay.
I don't believe so, but maybe. I don't know.
Okay, so we're good. Spoilers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go into spoilers. So I'll say it quickly. The one example that I was gonna give, and then you guys can go, is the sex
Yes.
situations. Like, the Lady Bird plays the whole sex, like losing her virginity. That's a big moment, and it's played well.
It
And
is.
it's the exact same way that it is. It's the way it happened to me, and I'm sure it's the way it happened to you. Like, the awkwardness, the nothing about it is overplayed. So it's very relatable. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
what people like. They watch a movie like this, is like, wow, this is exactly the way it happened to me. And I was like, yeah, but it's not that interesting. Like, it's okay. It's okay to have a scene that's true to reality, but can we have moments of it, and then the rest of the movie can be an actual movie? But Edge of 17 has the scene in the car, which is also, I'm sure a situation like that can arise, but not to a lot of people. Like, it's not going to happen to a
Yeah.
lot of people, or even girls that, like, say to a guy, like, I want to suck your cock, and then they actually have a thing in the car with them. That's a very specific situation that's not super relatable,
Yeah.
but it still had something that was useful about it dramatically, to
Absolutely.
refer to the character's place. So yeah, I think those type of touches is probably what had a strong reaction for people, especially critics viewing Lady Bird. It just needs to be your kind of movie, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, my first time bore literally no resemblance to Lady Bird, but
Okay, well, you had a first good time, I guess.
yeah,
Um.
but won't get into details
Yeah,
about
no,
that
definitely.
publicly. But
Gil, I
uh,
was just gonna say that you mentioned that scene, and it's not related to what you were saying, but just when you earlier mentioned that the movie is kind of uh, shot with a bunch of wides, masters and wides and stuff, not too much coverage. The first thing I thought of was that scene, because I think in most movies that would be a place where you'd cut in for a lot of close-ups, not so much the actual scene, but the follow-up when they're in bed together talking and they end up getting into a fight and everything.
on a side note, though, I mean, being that Timothy Chalamet made both Lady Bird and Call Me by Your Name in the same year, I was kind of worried that he was going to get typecast as a premature ejaculator.
uh, wow.
I
It's
that's
funny,
another
I
thing,
saw.
is like, there's been requests to try and avoid too much jokes about ejaculation, abortion, all that type of stuff.
um, I saw both of those movies. I did not realize that it was the same year, and I know I saw them both in theaters. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is true to life. What are you gonna do? I mean, most men are premature ejaculators, like, for the first, not to mention the first few times with a new girl, yes, but especially if you're like a teenager, your hormones are just like out of control. Like you cannot keep them under control. Like you really have to get good at it. It takes practice.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. In any case, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I was going to mention one of the things I wanted to talk about was the, you know, I don't know if this, when I first saw Lady Bird, if this was something that tainted my feelings for the movie because the very first scene and the very last scene of movies are both always very important and stuff like that, or at least almost always. And when I saw Lady Bird this time, it really reminded me of some stuff I'd forgotten, like about it, seeing it the first time, obviously, and the opening scene where Lady Bird is driving with her mother in the car. They're at the end of a long trip coming back to Sacramento. They get into a disagreement. It's really well written because it feels like a parent and a child arguing over stuff they've already argued about, and they're just kind of rehashing whatever. And she gets to the point where she doesn't, the character does not want to continue the conversation, can't stand being in that situation, but is not the one driving, and opens the door and throws herself out of the car, much to the surprise and shock of the driver. And the two things that I thought about both this time and the first time I saw it with that opening scene was that I couldn't help but think that I completely agree with the mother. Now, I mean, later on in the movie, I think that she goes really too far with a lot of things, particularly the way she talks to her daughter. And it's very clear that she doesn't understand a lot of things about her daughter and she doesn't support her the way she needs to emotionally and stuff like that. But in that opening scene, I am 100% on board with everything the mom is saying. And I just see the daughter as this like completely like entitled like person, like spoiled, snobbish person. And I can't believe that she's saying these arguments to her mom. But then the other thing I think about is the whole concept of her throwing herself out the car in that scenario. I think Crazy Stupid Love did it better. I mean, that's the exact same opening scene with Steve Carell when his wife is saying that that she's divorcing him because she's leaving him. She cheated on him or something like that. And he's like, says he just wants to stop the car. She doesn't want to. She wants to keep having their crazy argument about their marriage. And he just jumps out of the car. It was funnier. And it actually kind of seemed to make more sense in that movie, which was like probably 5 years earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I guess it was like out of left field for but I guess it's that sort of tone. Although I feel like, you see, that's not very realistic. That's
Probably the
that's
least
not
realistic
like,
thing in the movie, though.
yeah, exactly. Like that's pretty extreme. I think what's more extreme, and that's a good comparing between movies, is when she steals the car in Edge of 17. And leaves her mom like carless at her job. That scene I feel like is more realistic. The more realistic of both of these would be just somebody running away from home without a car.
Yeah.
Especially because she doesn't have a license. But it's actually conceivable that she can drive a car but doesn't have a license yet.
Yeah, well,
That is possible.
they did say that she failed the test, so that means that
Yes,
she at least
she knows how to
knows how
drive.
to drive enough
She's
to
just doing
have gone
something
to take it.
illegal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, that was a lot more believable for sure. You know what? Never mind. It is extremely believable if she actually learned to drive, just haven't been able to pass the test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having grown up with a younger sister, I can tell you that the whole stealing the car thing, when it comes to a 17-year-old girl, entirely believable.
Yeah. No, for sure. More than jumping out of a car.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess
Uh,
maybe working off of that about the mothers is also a good point of comparison.
yes.
Is one of the big things that I felt like generally The Edge of 17 does better is it's not necessarily the way life happens, The Way Life Happens is probably Lady Bird, but The Edge of 17 is just a teachable
Mhm.
movie,
Yeah.
in that the parenting style of everybody involved, especially like the Woody Harrelson character, taken a bit to the extreme, but the idea is that adults worry, especially the mom worries because she's got a lot on her mind, but they mostly worry about the kids, but stay out of their way because they really never listen to you when they're teenagers. So you really have to just be say like, hey, this is my number, call me if you need me, pretty much. Where I feel like in Ladybird is a bit more hands on, and they keep like, like tug and pull of the mom and the daughter. And then I felt, to me personally, the whole mom playing the invisible game, that seems to me like it didn't feel very believable. And then she ends up not saying goodbye to her. Like it's so hard for me to buy that stuff, as realistic as that movie is trying to be, because a parent of a teenager knows that like teenagers are horrible people. But they're growing. They're just like
Yeah.
toddlers. I'm going through that right now. Like they're growing. Like you can't blame them. All you can do is just be there for them. And as long as they don't kill themselves, and they get through like the teenage years, hopefully they'll become, useful adults.
Hopefully, they don't kill
Hopefully.
anybody else either.
Yeah,
But
and I just
um,
feel like the parenting feels more realistic, actually,
Well,
specifically, and
hopefully they don't create anybody else also.
they don't what?
yeah, hopefully they don't make babies before they're not teenagers anymore.
Oh yeah, that's also very important.
Yes.
But yeah.
There's so many things I can say, and we should talk about, that I think
Mhm.
that Edge of 17 did better, or Lady Bird got wrong. But I did want to, just so it doesn't sound like I'm just totally like trashing this movie, because I did enjoy it more this time, like I said, and I did laugh
Mhm.
more often. There were a few positive things I wanted to say, like, and this is in no particular order. I was just a few things I just made a quick note about, but like, I think I really laughed at the scene where she finds out that her first boyfriend, I think his name's Danny or something like that, but
Yeah,
the tall guy that he's with, or that she's with, sorry. Um, when she finds him in the bathroom, like I remember watching, I was like, I didn't even remember his character, to be honest. I was like, because I think
Lucas Hedges.
because Timothy Chalamet leaves such a big like impact on the movie, and I like, that's he's the only thing I really remembered her being with, and I was like, oh, she was with some other guy, and I was like, this guy's like a theater guy. I don't remember this. This guy's kind of. And then all of a sudden, he's like making out with another dude in the bathroom, and I just laughed. I was like, "That is so good," because her life was going so good. I was like, I don't remember all this positivity in this movie. It's just everything just wrecked,
Well, not
But
to mention that his family is like ultra religious and stuff. Yeah,
extremely, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I just also, like, I mentioned this earlier, but like Timothy Chalamet was so great, because like he plays the Kyle character, and it's so funny because it's such a great way to write that cool, hip, edgy teenager, because he is so cool in every scene until the moment he opens his mouth. That he's this rich kid in Sacramento going to a private school, and she's like asking him questions, and he just goes, "Yeah, I don't like money." He's just like, he's so stupid, It's
I,
just,
No, he's really dumb. The whole thing with the conspiracy theories and stuff.
God, the
Yeah, that
conspiracy
is pretty
theories.
spot on. Like all those
It's
independent
it's
thinking
so
kids, they tend to
great.
be
It's
conspiracy
so
theorists.
perfect. It's like, I mean, he's like almost like an amalgamation of people I've known in my life, and it's like, it just makes me laugh, because I hate his character, but I love to hate it. It's like he's so good.
yeah.
Yeah, but you
I,
see, go ahead, Matt.
so I was just kind of thinking about, like, there's an episode of Family Guy where Stewie pretends to be a high school student to try to
I
prove
remember
that he
that.
could be the coolest kid in
Yeah.
class. And I was just like, okay, that's totally Timothy Chalamet's character in this movie. I mean, minus. I mean, he does have the conspiracy theory crap, and I don't like money, but the whole like, no, it's lame. Everything's lame.
Yeah,
Like the brooding doesn't give a shit kind of
yeah,
brooding personality that he's just putting on, but. Obviously, with Family Guy, it was played for laughs. In this movie, we're supposed to take it mostly seriously, but with a few laughs. But
well, it's worth mentioning actually, Matt,
yeah,
because you bring that up. um Edge of 17 was a movie that takes place when it's supposed to take place.
yeah,
And I mean, when it, I should say, sorry, let me rephrase that. Edge of 17 takes place when it came out, more or less.
yeah,
um
Present time.
there's a scene where he looks at a calendar, so it pretty much confirms that the movie's taking place in like 2016 or something like that, 15 or 16. Which does actually place Haley Steinfeld's character as a Zoomer, whereas all the high school kids in Lady Bird are basically my age, more or less, maybe about a year older than me, which definitely puts them as like millennials. And like you were mentioning that cliche, thing about the cool kid. I
yeah,
mean, it's covered really, really well in the movie 21 Jump Street, and it's like so true. I mean, to any, any you know um iGen Zoomer kids that might actually hear this. I mean, let me just tell you, if you think that your generation was apathetic, trust me, we had the apathetic thing down. If you cared about anything, you were not cool at all. You- there's nothing cooler than just not caring. That's how you be cool. You just don't care about anything.
uh,
Yeah, that's true. That is pretty much the definition of cool is not caring. It feels like in high school.
Back then,
I,
for sure.
I will say the supporting cast, like in both movies, I feel like the friend Julie in Lady Bird,
Yeah,
it's pretty good casting there and performance. But
very good.
I still give the edge, pun intended, to Edge of 17. Like Irwin kills me.
He's so
the,
funny.
the character, the
yeah,
character of that guy, the Asian guy, is
Yeah,
just like hilarious. Actually, that Red, even though he overplayed it a bit,
yeah,
that was so relatable, especially because we're guys.
yep,
Like that was so relatable to the awkwardness of being a teenager more than anything in any of these movies. Is I don't know,
100%.
and it's just so
yeah,
hilarious. Like the performance is so hilarious. Like it's taken to the extreme, and I love it.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
love when he first meets her and finds out that like they both like mini golf or something like that, and he's so clearly into her and she's so clearly not into him, and he just goes, "Hey, we should go sometime." And she just goes like, Wait, you mean like together?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." And she goes, "I think like with a group." And he's like, "Oh, no, no, yes, yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, like as a it's just it's so God, like my high school life flashing before my eyes. It's like, ugh,
yeah. I mean that scene with them in the pool where she actually asks him like, "Oh, so do you want to have sex?" And he's like, "Oh, I guess." They're like, "Oh, no, 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 we're not going to have sex." Like, you don't say that to him, to a guy. I'm like, no, you really don't. And then the fact that he flips it on her at the end, like, I know that
yeah,
the movie was about me. I'm like, oh no, the movie wasn't about you.
yeah,
Oh, geez, I'm such a like. No, no, the movie was about you. It's like, I mean, yeah, just going from that scene in the middle of the movie of you don't say that to a guy to him saying something that you don't say to a girl at that moment,
yeah.
and eliciting the same reaction. That was a really nice touch. Uh,
Since you brought up the pool scene, I was just gonna say, like, I think, in my opinion, one of the strongest things about Edge of 17 is the fact that it is. I'm not trying to say that this is the only movie in history that's ever done this or anything like that, but I don't see it that often, and I just think it's absolutely perfect. If you're making a movie about like a coming of age film about high school kids. Obviously, the any coming of age film, no matter what the plot is, when you boil it down, the idea is this person going to grow up, you know, and so clearly that leads to a lot of similarities with every kind of movie like that you make. And all I'm getting at is that I just think it's so perfect that this movie kind of decided to make, if not 100%, at least like 90% of the conflict and drama and the problems that this character has to face and overcome are almost 100% her fault. Like they just from the inciting incident where, once again we're in the spoiler section here, where her best friend ends up hooking up with her brother who she's not, on good terms with, and that pretty much puts her in a lonely state because she's now no longer talking to anybody. From that moment forward, most of the problems in the movie are a result of how she poorly handles situations. And it's all stuff that you can pretty much expect from her character, with the way she's been written, the way she's been presented to us. It's all very realistic responses. It's just the wrong choices,
Yeah,
for that character to make. It's like that the moment they're in that swimming pool, she says that to him, and you're just like, are you kidding me? Like, wow, I can't believe you would say that to somebody. It's the war, and she's just trying to be funny, and she's just so socially awkward. She's trying to say something
yeah,
silly out of a movie, and it's the worst thing you could say. And then, the same thing with like when she's the way she responds to her best friend and the way she responds to her brother. It's all very understandable and very realistic, and yet cringy and horrifying, like you to watch. You're just like, wow, I can't believe you're just watching a train wreck in the best possible way.
yeah. Actually, this might be a good jumping off point for one of the things that I did not like about The Edge of 17. I agree with like 90. I think I agree with almost everything that you just said about so much of the strength of the movie being that Nadine is just so bad at handling herself that she's creating most of her own problems. Still, and I'm going to start with a little bit of a nitpick, but assuming that Krista, Nadine's best friend, is also 17, and the whole hooking up with her older brother thing. In the state of Oregon, technically that's statutory rape.
Oh wow, I didn't think about that.
Just saying. Uh, and Kira Sedgwick seems to have, yeah, the mother seems to have no problem with that. Uh, but anyway, uh, there are a couple of issues, but actually that was one thing that I didn't like about the ending was that um, Nadine seemed to put a smile on her face and say, hey, big brother, have a good day, and hey, sis, friend of mine from the second grade who started banging my brother when you knew that we had a really strained relationship and you picked him over me. Yeah, call me later. And she just accepts it and walks off. That's one of those cases where I don't think she actually grew as a human being. I think that she has every single right to be like, hey, brother, I love you because you're my brother. Don't like your decisions. Krista, go fornicate yourself on an iron pike.
Hmm.
I mean, you're allowed to forgive people and not forget. You're allowed to. I'm going to let certain things go to in a healthy way. Like I'm not going to let you hurt my brain anymore. I'm not going to let you drive me to like throw myself off of an overpass and try to kill myself anymore. But I don't have to like you anymore. What you've done to me is irrevocable. We can't really repair this.
Don't you
And
think that, Matt? Don't you think that some of the not just the growth that she goes through with emotional growth throughout the movie, but also the understanding that she gains when she has that what I think is the strongest scene in the whole movie, pretty much, hushed hallway scene between her and the brother when she gets home at the end of the movie, when she realizes when she sees things through his perspective by the end of the film, and she realizes that her brother isn't a total douchebag. Don't you think that that realization makes what her friend did less of a betrayal?
no,
Why not?
Why is it a betrayal at all? Actually, I'm trying to
I
understand.
mean, I think it's only a
What
I
betrayal
betrayal?
in the
She's
sense.
not cheating on her.
I don't
Well,
know. I mean,
They're
well,
not lesbians.
I don't know. Maybe somebody in our, maybe one of the women in our audience can tell us if there's a like female equivalent to the bro code. But I
I
mean,
think there definitely is, but still, like
I mean, it seems like that would be a clear violation.
But
I
really,
but
so you
but
want to tell me that like if you had a friend that started dating your sister, that would be a problem?
especially it could
uh,
definitely be conceivably if you had a very strained and difficult relationship with that sibling.
I mean, it's a borderline abusive relationship with that sibling. I mean, like I mean, the moment that she says, I'm going to go out with friends, and he like mocks her and says, "Oh, did you say friends, like plural or something?" I
Well,
mean, like,
in his
I mean,
defense, she cut a pretty low blow before that too, I think.
yeah, but I mean, it's just, I mean, again, it depends on context, but
Yeah.
I mean, the context of this whole situation, like, yeah, it's an absolute betrayal of trust, and an absolute betrayal of everything that was built since the second grade. To
What do you mean? So
just
there's
say
like an
like,
unwritten rule that you're not allowed to hit on the like your best friend's brother? Is that like a
I,
thing?
I,
I think for a lot of people it is. I don't think it's a
I,
necessarily a universal thing, but I think
I,
Ah,
it's definitely easy enough to assume that two people could feel that way.
there's a, I think that there's a certain boundary where, like, I mean, we've all known each other for a while, and I mean, if I wanted to bang your sister, I would probably go through you first and say
well,
like,
Yeah.
yeah, but
"Hey,
that's
Gil,
more
is
of
it
a
okay?"
protective thing because she's like a sister. I feel like if it's the other way around, like I understand if the genders were flipped here, but she doesn't need to protect her older brother from her, you
Well,
know,
it's I don't think that
younger
that's the
friend.
way she's upset. I guess what
Yeah.
so okay, if I'm trying to overanalyze this, I guess what I'm saying, my thought, my reaction to what Matt's saying is simply that I definitely don't think there's anything wrong with the way the movie sets it up. I think it's very conceivable that the kind of relationship she had with her best friend and the kind of relationship she had with her brother would be in a very like contentious relationship. Um and the fact that her friend and her are like their only two friends. They don't have a social circle outside of that. They are the lifeline that each other have, and to know intimately that that's how each other sees one another, and then for her friend to also know that she more or less despises her brother. I mean, when I say that, I don't mean literally, but like in the way that siblings kind of argue and don't like each other and don't get along sometimes. So you can assume that they clearly spend hours and hours talking about the negative things about her brother. You even see a scene where her friend is chiming in when she's talking about her brother with his clothing choices and the way he presents himself and stuff like that. So you can assume that this is a regular thing for them. They kind of hate on him just like they kind of hate on everybody because they're like outsiders and they don't really want to be a part of everything. And so when her friend basically doesn't consult her first. She finds them in bed and then, you know, feels betrayed initially about that because of the fact that it's like, why you didn't even say anything to me. Then she feels that it's kind of a betrayal of their entire setup because it goes against everything that they've kind of been about in their life. But that's the kind of thing that can blow over. What compounds the problem later is that then she wants to continue seeing him and then kind of start joining his circle of friends, which she feels she's being fake and so on and so forth. So, like, I definitely think it's very conceivable for her to feel the way she feels. I don't think it's like a flaw in the movie in any way or anything like that. I just think that at the end, I think it's equally plausible that after what she goes through and after what she kind of learns and everything, that the problems that she felt about her best friend and her brother would kind of seem irrelevant after that.
I mean, I think that Nadine actually made a good argument to Krista in that scene in in the burger joint where she's just like, okay, what if I wanted to fuck your dad? And you just caught me, like, giving your dad a handy J, and oh, you came home early. How would you feel about that? That's how I feel about you screwing my brother. Like, I don't
Except
think
that
that
that would be
that's
far less moral. It would be far
Yeah,
more of
that's
an immoral situation
yeah.
because that's why it's a hyperbole.
yeah, but
It
I
still
mean,
works.
but I think that it's a fair point to make to somebody who doesn't have a brother. And Krista is established as not having a brother. I mean,
Yes,
it's
that's true.
just, I mean, just kind of try to see this from my perspective, and Krista doesn't. Krista refuses to see it from her perspective, and I think that
I don't
that's
know about
something
that.
that. No, I think I'm absolutely certain about that. I mean, I think I think she absolutely refuses to see it from Nadine's perspective.
No,
Uh,
I don't think that's true. What I think is happening here is that it's the fact that they stumbled onto it and she found them in bed that's the problem. I'll accept like the reasonable request of maybe asking, hey, like I'm kind of into your brother. Do you think it would be okay if I ask him out on a date? Like I think that's a reasonable thing to ask, like versus being, and then it's reasonable to be upset if you find them in bed. But once you've found out and they apologize for like the situation, and but then say like, but is there's no reason why this should not be cool. I'm sorry if I didn't ask you, but can we move on now? Like, because we really like each other.
Well,
And for her, and I think it's reasonable for her to accept that, like later on in the movie.
that would be oh yeah, I was gonna say, like, that would be the reasonable thing that a rational thinking human being that was not a 17-year-old teenager would do.
Oh yeah, for sure. And maybe Matt is correct, and maybe Krista never actually says those lines. She never says like, "Hey, sorry, it was effed up that we stumbled onto it and I didn't ask for your blessing first. Not blessing, but just kind of give you a heads up. We do really like each other. Like, cause she kept like telling her that it's a fling, that her brother is gonna like, leave
Yeah.
her for someone better looking. But once she realizes that they have a good relationship and they make each other happy, I think it's very believable that she's kind of like, and she didn't say, "Hey, we're best friends again." She just said she can call her. Like she didn't say that like everything's good. She just said she's okay with her reaching out. So it doesn't that's what I like about the movie too. It leaves it ambiguous. Also with Erwin in the end, he doesn't completely reject her, but he doesn't completely take her as a date. Like he introduces her to his friends, but it's ambiguous whether or not it's gonna work out between them. So that's one of the touches that I kind of like about the movie is that it leaves it a bit open ended. You know.
on that I will agree. Yeah, uh, absolutely.
One other thing I should before I forget is the on in Ladybird. Do you agree that like because if you look at the structure as a whole, it does feel like even though the approach is original and it's Sacramento and it's in the past and all these and it's very realistic portrayal, it does feel like it's one of those movies that when you really look at the specifics, it checks all the obvious boxes. the
Yes.
whole thing with the prom, the
Mm.
this,
Hmm.
like she wants to get
Well,
away. Oh,
there's plenty of these
Yeah.
types of movies where it's like it starts out with one guy and then the rest of the movie is about her being with a different guy kind of thing.
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
a
it is
lot of options for
strange.
sure.
Where Edge of 17 doesn't fall for those things as much, but I'm reading the reviews, and for some reason, like it's Edge of 17 that gets more like, oh, so they try to avoid the tropes of teen movies, but they don't completely get away from them. And then Lady Bird is like, oh, it's a breath of fresh air, and it's like so truthful and honest and original, and like what are you talking about? It's not that original.
um
It's,
I wanted to say, okay, I think it's important I mention this. When I saw Lady Bird in theaters, the thing that turned me off initially to it was, like I said, that opening scene, but then also like compounding on that was just that I really connected with this movie in a big way. Like, I really did because she's playing a high school senior in the year 2002 and she's going off to college and such. I graduated in 2002 and I went off to college in a bigger city than what I grew up in. And I was desperate to get out of the crappy little town that I grew up in. And I can't help but completely agree with her mother because of the fact that she's unbelievably spoiled. Because I got out of my crappy town and escaped to Sacramento. Sacramento was a paradise to me compared to Madera, California. Um, she can't stand being in Sacramento. Sacramento is not a bad town at all. It's got phenomenal weather and it's a very beautiful city. And it compared to a lot of places, it actually has a bit of a nightlife. It's got some great like craft brewing areas and good bars, and it's got a lot going for it. Good restaurants and things like that. I mean, it's no San Francisco or like LA or New York or Paris like they talk about in terms of like hip cities to live in or anything like that. But I mean, she's living a middle class life in a really pretty damn decent city, and it's just like I couldn't believe how that this character's um the drama in this character's life is that she's trying to escape Sacramento. That's what she's upset because she got accepted to Davis. Davis is a good school. Like there's a lot worse places you could go, and so that's how I felt when I saw it. And then watching it now this time, that came back even more because I was just like, wow, I really do think, to me at least, that that's the key to why I like Edge of 17 better, because even though Nadine's character in Edge of 17, Haley Steinfeld's character, makes many, many mistakes, and so many of the mistakes she makes are what compounds the problems she's facing throughout the movie. That's all very understandable. And more importantly, her real character traits are that she doesn't feel good about herself. I mean, she really dislikes so much about herself. She has no self-confidence whatsoever. She's super awkward, and that's very relatable. But moreover, when it comes down to it, she's a very good person, you know, and the whereas Ladybird is really snobbish and like it's like there's even a moment where her mother just literally explains the details of their financial woes of her family to her, and yet she is still dead set on going out of state to New York to go to school. I mean, go to junior college for 2 years, get out of your city if you have to. It's fine. There's plenty of junior colleges in California, in big great cities, that you can go really far from your parents if you really wanted to, you know and that's going to save you insane amounts of money compared to going out of state tuition to a good school. She spends her time
looking at really nice houses with her mom because they wish that they were in another economic bracket. They wish that they were more wealthy. And I mean, money plays such a huge part of the drama and the conflict in Lady Bird, and it really does come down to money in a big way. And unlike in I'm sorry, this is a long thing here I'm going on, but unlike in Edge of 17, where the main character feels betrayed, whether this is true or not, because she's not really betrayed, but she feels betrayed because her best friend leaves her to meet new people. In Ladybird ditches her best friend and their new friends that they've met in her drama class to just go running around with brand new popular rich friends because she wants to be part of that crowd. So it's like on so many levels Nadine is just a better person than Ladybird.
Yeah.
She's more relatable, and she's a better enjoyable person to watch and to try and relate to.
Well, I think they're both complicated characters. I think they're both pretty bad. Like they're imperfect for sure.
Yeah,
But it is true that Lady Bird is a bit more, I feel like.
snobbish.
Yeah, but Nadine, but this is actually, and it's a good, because I was gonna say this, I might have touched on this before, but what the reason why Edge of 17 to me is a better movie, because it makes more of a statement about, or at least reveals the truth about what it is to be a teenager, which is essentially to
Yeah,
be a very self-absorbed, horrible person,
yeah,
an immature person. And how do people around you can help you react to you? And I feel like Edge of 17 does a better job at that. Like the Woody Harrelson character, he
Mm.
basically gives her shit back, but at the while still being very supportive. Like
Yep.
he entertains her. He's basically like a soundboard,
He's basically a therapist.
a therapist. Like and he says very little. Like I
Yeah,
love that scene, like in the car when he's like, "Well, we both know what needs to be said now." No, it's like, because it is true. Like no amount of advice is gonna help a person in that moment. Like she really needs to figure it out for herself. Where I feel like in Lady Bird, yeah, she does figure it out on her own with the help of her father, at least the financial part. But she tramples on everybody, and the only redeeming thing in the end is like, oh, finally she accepted her given name, so like there's an inkling of hope that like she'll stop shitting on her parents.
Yeah.
Both work. I just feel like Edge of 17 is just more cinematic as far as like giving us a very good representation of like being a teenager, and what can be effective and ineffective. Like the thing with the mom, like at first she's like, don't do this, don't do that, doesn't work. But if she just gives her breathing
yeah.
room, space,
That
and then
text
like
thing is
the
such a good
text
moment.
back, like when she says like I'm safe and she says okay, that's what a teenager
It's a
needs.
great scene.
They need to
Really
be
great scene.
Yeah.
trusted. Yeah, so like touches like that, like those were, there weren't as effective moments in Lady Bird. There's like, that people make a big fuss about the scene with the mom in the car, like when she like has the whole emotional thing about like crying and then going back to try and say goodbye, but she misses the opportunity to say
Oh yeah,
goodbye. I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's a good scene. It's pretty
good.
emotional,
It's well acted.
yeah, but it's not. My mind wasn't blown.
No, 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 no.
No,
Yeah.
and then
I actually, when I saw that in this time around, I thought to myself, I was like, oh, this is. I was like, it was moving me a little bit, and I was like, oh, that's she really wants to go back, and I was like, and all I thought was, is there a scene I forgot? Is she gonna make it in time to hug her and say goodbye? And then she doesn't, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that was nice. It wasn't earth shattering. I thought it was leading up to something big, but it was just like, oh, okay, it was a good scene.
I
Whatever.
mean, it wraps up the mom really well because it teaches the mom a lesson that like
Yeah.
giving her the cold shoulder wasn't gonna work. That's not gonna bring her back. Like
No.
it was pointless. It was bad on her part. But but yeah, I don't know. And ultimately, I guess Lady Bird is really just about. It's kind of like Whiplash, or like, all those movies about success. Like, basically, if you want to be successful in life, you kind of have to be an asshole. Like, you really have to kind of say me, 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 me. Like, you should make all these efforts and financial, like, just so, like. And she even makes a point to say, like, give me a number, and then when I'm rich and famous, I'll pay you back.
It's a good scene.
And I think Damon Chazelle too, like, kind of touches on that in Whiplash, where, like, when you're like trying to be very, very successful, you kind of trample on like relationships in your life, and like it comes at the cost of relationships and all that. And I guess the result is Greta Gerwig became an actress and then a director. So I guess it works to be an asshole when you're a teenage. Like, that's the point of the movie, which, I don't know if that's a good lesson to teach.
Yeah. The only thing is that Lady Bird is going to a liberal arts college, which probably made her a really useless human being.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Wow.
but, so it made her mom right. You're never going to get a job that's going to, allow you to pay back what it was to raise you.
When I heard that line, I did think of that. Like, yeah, you know
Yeah,
what? Greta Gerwig became an actress and then a director. But
yeah,
99% of the kids that like go through all this
yeah.
trouble and go to like New York or LA or wherever the fuck else, like, they don't succeed per se in life. They'll
Right.
end up working at Starbucks or something.
Yeah, right. I
Um,
I I, I studied lesbian dance theory. Give me $150,000 a year. I mean, come on. Uh, but one thing that I do want to kind of interject though, like that I did really love about Edge of 17, like hands down, probably took the movie from like a 7 to an 8.
Mm,
I mean, the Woody Harrelson character is absolutely
yeah.
wonderful. I mean, perfectly acted, but also perfectly written.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, at the beginning of the movie, they start off with Nadine sitting down and saying, I'm going to kill myself, and going through all that, going through her whole spiel, and Woody Harrelson just very calmly saying, "Well, you know what? I wrote my own suicide note today."
Yeah. Uh-huh.
There are only 32 minutes of my day that I find enjoyable, and they're constantly being ruined by the same poorly dressed
Yeah.
17-year-old girl who keeps barging into my office. and,
Yep.
and, and he just delivers it so deadpan. And it's just so well done. And like, even the moment when he says, "By the way, you're my favorite student," did you really mean that? That seemed to be what you needed to hear right at the moment.
Yeah.
sounds like the right thing to say.
Yeah, right.
I I even like the little things, like when the whole movie, she has been implying that he's a bachelor and that he will never find love or something like that over and
He's
over and
bold.
over.
Yeah.
He never ever contradicts her. And then he when she really needs help, he picks her up, takes her to his house just because she really needs a ride or something like that. And they walk
Yeah,
in, and there's a baby in the baby chair, and she's like, what is that baby? And instead of saying what a normal person would say, he just walks up and goes, "What the hell is that doing there?"
Yeah, I did read a trivia that apparently Woody Harrelson ad-libbed a lot of the lines.
I read that too. Yeah.
Yes, it's no, he's a treasure. He's definitely a treasure. I think the Oscars that just aired, he was saying how, like, he was he was saying how he's uh he's been nominated several times but never won. It's like the most words I've ever said is like right now, like presenting. Anyways, it's like
Yeah.
presenting. This is where it's at, where you actually get to talk.
yeah.
Anyways,
It's
but
also where
like,
you get to. It's also where you get to get slapped in the face.
yeah, no,
Um,
he
Yeah.
definitely
Right.
deserves an Oscar. I hope he wins an Oscar someday, just because
yeah.
he's been such a jewel
I
for the
really wanted him
movies.
to win for the Billboards one.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's true.
yeah. Yeah. That was good. he's been a really solid actor for a lot of years, and it's kind
Yeah,
of
it's
sad
crazy
that
to think he started at Cheers as like the good looking guy at the end of the bar. It's
Yeah.
like it's like crazy that like
And then Natural Born Killers.
yeah, is that too. Um,
Quite the twist.
but yeah, I guess to sum up, I think we covered it pretty well. It's one thing I was gonna say, we didn't have a cinematography rant, but if I'm not mistaken, The Edge of 17 was shot on film. Um, it
Find
seems
out.
like it because it said Panavision
Mm,
cameras, and it does not look like a digital Panavision. So it looks like a film, and Lady Bird was like, I think the Alexa Mini.
uh, yeah,
And it is interesting because they add a lot of grain and stuff to make it look like film, and they kind of sell it. It sort of works. A bit too grainy, but that's okay. But it is the one thing I would say, The Age of 17 like was a bit too bright for me. But I know it's a teen movie, so they don't
Yeah.
go hardcore.
I, the funny thing is, if I had a criticism of the cinematography in Edge of 17, it would be that some of it was too flat and dull, not
Yeah,
so much
exactly.
that it was
Flat
too
and
bright.
bright. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
flat
Yeah,
and bright, like the combination of the two.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, if you're going to shoot digital and give it kind of a film look to it, nobody's beating Greg Fraser anymore. In terms of
Yeah.
camera work,
I don't know.
in
His
terms of
stuff looks pretty digigital to me, but you know, uh,
well,
he doesn't add
I,
enough grain. I think, but
but one thing that the Edge of 17 definitely has over Lady Bird is I mean the actual operation of the camera is just more interesting.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, no. You mean
it,
Edge of
it,
17, right? Yeah.
That's what he said. Yeah.
did I
Yeah, yeah.
say Edge of Tomorrow?
No, no,
I
no,
don't
no,
know.
no, no, no. I'm just making sure. I didn't hear you, so I'm making sure you
No,
said Edge
okay,
of 17 more
all right.
interesting than Lady Bird.
Yes, that's what
Yeah,
he said.
yeah. Edge of 17 is just more interesting than Lady Bird in terms of the actual camera work, the actual movement, the actual
Yeah.
setting up of the scenes. And I mean, like, Lady Bird is one of those things where actually, if we want to do a brief cinematography rant, I mean, when it comes to like composition, and Gil, you referred earlier to covering scenes in wides and just letting them play out. I mean, there is a way to do that really brilliantly, and you've already alluded to that, but you still have to block the actors in a
Yeah.
way that's interesting. And that's where Lady Bird just fell flat on its face. I mean, you just cover a full scene of two people lying in bed in 1-2 shot. That's not interesting. You look at Woody Allen. I mean, there are scenes that he covers in just one long shot shooting down a hallway, but the actors are walking back and forth and they're arguing and they're doing stuff. And things are just developing. He gives actors things to do in that one shot. Even if it's a locked off camera, it doesn't even have to be a moving camera. You just need to give actors shit to do.
Yeah,
And
but I think that's the style. Yeah, she was going for like a very flat space, flat like images kind of style. Like I guess like life is just boring in Sacramento, so nothing is moving very much. And I did notice, like, because I watched the next movie she did, like Little Women, and she shot it like a normal movie, like more like The Edge of 17. So it's like, okay, so she can, so it wasn't like it's not that it's her style. She just very specifically for Lady Bird went with this very specific style, but she can actually shoot a movie very cinematically,
Hmm.
if that's what she's going for. So, at least I know it was very, very intentional, which I assumed it is, but it's just not a choice that
Yeah.
works amazingly for me.
yeah, just because that was what you were going for doesn't mean that what you were going for was the you know right place to go. It's
Yeah.
I, and that's always a problem with budding filmmakers. Oh well, that was intentional. Yeah, it was intentional. It's still shit. But uh,
Yeah, I know there's a chance that you might just want to cut all this out because we've already gone pretty long and we had a nice stopping point. But
Yeah,
two
that's true.
little things I was gonna like just mention as positive things, one for each movie. In Ladybird, the two scenes that I think do work really well between the Ladybird and her mom, I think almost work entirely because of is the mom Laurie Metcalf? Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She's got two or three scenes in the movie where all she does is react with her face. And two of the best ones, the ones that really work, I guess, really are the ones where she's picking out her prom dress or something like that. And I don't think the dialogue is that great. It's not like my favorite scene in terms of the writing at all, really,
Hmm.
but because it's a little spot on, it's a little like nail on the head kind of thing. But like, there's a moment where the daughter is finally confronting the mom and saying that she's not supportive, basically. She
Hmm.
says mean things to her, basically, or something like that. And her mom's response is, "I want you to be the best version of you can be," which is a pretty nice civil way of a mom to say, "I want you to be better," kind of thing. And therefore I'm critical because I would want you to be better. And so her response is, "What if this is the best I can be?" And instead of coming back, it just cuts to another over the shoulder back to Laurie Metcalf, and she just gives her this look like, we both know that's not true. I mean, it's just the most obvious look of like, come on, like, moment. That one I liked. And then also just the one you mentioned before, Gil, the give me a number scene about the like
Hmm.
telling her that she doesn't want to ever have to speak to them again. Just give me a number of money that I can give you to pay you back for raising me, kind of thing. The There's something in that one too. Oh, I think it's that one. That one is a dialogue thing. I think it was the thing that you mentioned already about like, I don't think you're gonna ever make enough money or something like that, to pay me back, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, both movies have like good touches for what they do. I guess it's ultimately, I guess, a preference
Yeah,
thing.
I know with the Edge of 17, we already actually kind of mentioned this, really, the fact that like so much of what she struggles with is stuff that's totally her fault. I remember watching this movie after I saw it in theaters. It was when I was living with a bunch of roommates. It came on TV, like on probably HBO or something like that. And one of my roommates, Mike, was he and I both share a love of coming of age films, and I think there's a big group of us, like 5 or 6 people, watching this movie, Edge of 17, and the scene where she has managed to get the guy Nick that she really likes to go on a date with her, but instead, of course, unfortunately, because he thinks it's a booty call, he makes a move and she's, not comfortable, with it, and she tells him no. I love that the movie kind of, I mean, so many lesser films would have, I mean, think about it. That scene in that movie comes right after the scene where the brother confronts the mom and talks her down. And then
Hmm.
she says, "Where are you going?" And he grabs his shirt and his keys and he says, "I'm going to go take care of it," because he's going to go find the sister and bring her home so that way the mom can relax and go to bed, and the horrible night can be over, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
eventually he does. Eventually they make contact and he gets her from the house, but then she tells him off and she finds her own way home and so on and so forth. But that's all beside the point. The point is that a lesser movie would have had the guy be like a Biff type of character, where she makes this terrible mistake of going on a date with a guy that she said really explicit stuff to on accident, and really, basically offered herself up to him, you know and and then he wouldn't take no for an answer,
you know, and then the giant hulking brother would show up and save the day, and then they would have
Yeah.
their talk, you know. But instead, this guy, being the creep that he is, I mean, she does say that he went to juvenile hall and he's not a very good guy or anything, but he's not a terrible person either. You know, she says no and he's just upset, you know. He just
Right.
gets off of her and just goes like, what do you want, you know, and whatever. And she starts panicking and gets, you know, upset that he's mad and that he doesn't, you know, about the situation. I remember my friend in our living room yelling at this at the TV and just going, "That's your fault. That's all your fault." Because it's so her making. She did all of it. She ruined that situation from the moment from the word go. You know, it's just it's such a perfect example of like how that movie does that. It's like everything is her fault.
Yeah, no, it kind of shows how like sometimes be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's like you weren't ready for it. Like you fantasize about certain things,
Yeah.
and then you know just ejaculate to her, premature ejaculation. Um,
Right. So I'm
or
not
in the
the only
case of
person who
women, you basically get cold feet. That's the premature ejaculation equivalence of men. It's a bit earlier in the process.
so I'm not the only person who's made an ejaculation joke in this
Yeah,
episode.
sorry,
All right.
I can
Thank you.
delete it if I'll get the
No, it's
approval to keep it in.
See that? There's the
That's
difference.
what she said.
That's damn, that was stupid. See, now you have to leave it in.
That's what he said
All
actually.
right.
Get approval to keep it in.
That's what I told him.